Thank you. All right, well, I want to start our meeting today with some introductions. And I guess maybe first I'll say it was wonderful to be together in person last month. And I thought that was a great way to kick it off and give us all a little bit of a longer time together and a chance to get to know each other. Also recognize that it's a monthly meeting. We're from all over the 8-county region, so we also want to make it accessible for everyone and use your time as efficiently and respectfully as we can. So therefore, we're meeting virtual today, but still want to do those introductions. So please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat and include your name, the organization you represent, maybe the location where you are. This will help everybody get reacquainted. But I also want to note that we have some first-time attendees here today who were not able to attend last month. And I did want to give you all who are new a chance to introduce yourselves on mic as people did last time around. So I'm going to be kind of simultaneously looking at my notes and trying to see who's here now. But if I call your name, then please go ahead and come onto the mic and introduce yourself with your name, your organization, where you are in the region. And if you are familiar, the group that you're representing as part of this Leadership Council body. So I will start with Jenny Hatch. Are you here? Maybe not yet. I'll just keep.
She's just connecting to audio.
Just joined.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll go to the next and come back along. Elisa Herrera, are you here?
Hello, everybody. Elisa Herrera, Executive Director of the Latino Leadership Council. I live in El Dorado County and work in Sacramento and Placer counties. Nice to be here.
Wonderful. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Next up, Sam Greenlee, are you here?
Yes, I am here. Sam Greenlee with Alchemist CDC.
Wonderful. Thank you. Glad to have you. And Wayne Mitchum, are you here?
Yeah, Wayne Mitchum, Clues Indian Community, Chairman for the tribe. Good to meet you guys.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. James Corliss, are you with us right now? Maybe no James yet. Jason Buckingham.
Yeah, I'm here. Jason Buckingham, Director for Golden Sierra Job Training Agency. And in this effort, we're representing Placer and El Dorado counties.
Great, thank you. And how about Jenny Hatch?
Yeah, this is Jenny Hatch, Executive Director for Sierra Nevada Alliance. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. So glad to have you all here. And is there anybody else who wasn't able to introduce themselves the first time around in January and is here now and would like to come off mic and introduce yourself? Carly, I think I see that you are talking, but I'm not hearing anything. So I'll go ahead and say Carly Adams is here with Community Strong Strategies, here supporting our core team. So welcome and thanks for being here. Okay, well, let's go back to our slides. I'm going to kind of continue on with some of our housekeeping and talking about what we're going to be addressing today and look at our agenda together. So today, as we look through, our primary focus for the meeting is going to be making progress on some of the strategy building and data orientation that will move us towards decision making and towards some of our next milestones. So one aspect of that is understanding tradable industries and seeing more data about tradable industries. And so we'll talk more about what that means and why we're focusing on that topic as we get further into the agenda. But that's features prominently in our agenda today, along with recapping a little bit about where we've been, reviewing some of the key leadership activities, both that are happening now and are coming up. And then making sure that we have a lot of time for interactive sessions. So we have a few different ways to engage here here in this virtual space. And we also look forward to having some open conversation as we wrap up. Our partners from Brookings and Cities GPS are here again to provide valuable insights into the tradable industries within the Capital Region. And again, that's something that then we'll spend some time talking through. We also have our core teams who are supporting. That includes the Valley Vision staff team, who hopefully has also introduced yourselves in the chat, as well as the Community Strong Strategies team. And you're going to hear from different members of our teams as we move through the agenda. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide to make sure that we are staying true to our meeting goals. So as I mentioned, we're going to spend some time today talking about tradable industries. So that encompasses one of our major goals. That's to establish a shared understanding of tradable industries. And then number two, to really explore industry clusters and considerations here for our region. So that's kind of understanding the ideas around tradable industries and then looking at the data. And let's go to the next slide. I think I'm going to transition over to Bel Reyes, who is going to talk a little bit about how we're going to spend our time together today and help walk us through some guidelines and rules of engagement. So Bel?
Great, thanks, Evan, and good afternoon, everyone. So great to see you all in the shared space. Again, Bel Reyes, part of the CSS team. We wanted just to take a moment as we continue to convene, gather, to offer into our shared space some group agreements. And again, our group agreements are intended to create safe space in place for the necessary critical dialogue that will help to inform and shape our efforts as the Capital Region Leadership Council. And so what you see here are agreements that we are offering into the space, and here shortly we'll provide an opportunity if there's one missing for you all to give voice and of course contribute to our collective group agreements. But I will briefly review them. The first is one mic. Of course, just recognizing we're a fairly large group and in the Zoom space, sometimes it gets a bit technically challenging to see who's coming off mic, who has a virtual or physical hand up. So one mic just meaning to honor if one person is speaking, that we give them space so that we can hear them in our shared space, not only today, but as we're moving forward. The next is to allow for authenticity. And simply meaning to come into the space with our truest of self, bringing together our individual and collective thought, leadership, and voice. What's learned here leaves here. Again, this as part of the Leadership Council is to have the necessary critical dialogue that will help meaningfully inform and shape our efforts as a capital region moving forward. And so as we do so, of course, the learning and the contributions and information shared in our space will again inform and shape our efforts across the region as we move forward. The next is be open-minded to our individual contributions, the collective contributions, and of course the information that is shared when we come together during our time together as the Capital Region Leadership Council. And then lastly, show grace for growth, recognizing that we all bring collectively a shared wealth of experience, wisdom, and knowledge, but we're all at different spaces. And so again, we offer to show grace for our individual and collective growth. So here are the group agreements that we are bringing to our shared space as we move forward together as a Leadership Council, again, not only in our time together today, but our future meetings. But want to pause here for if there are any questions or further clarification needed on any of the agreements reviewed, and also to offer up space if there's something that's missing, from the group agreements listed here that we feel is needed for the collective group to move forward. And I'll take a look through the chat box and of course through our wonderful virtual boxes here, and we'll also lean into the team in case I missed someone. Okay. Great. Well, then before we move forward, we always like to say, to get a bit of a shared consensus, if we feel comfortable with move forward and a commitment to these group agreements, we'll look for a physical or a virtual thumbs up. If maybe we need to spend a little bit more time here, we invite you to provide a physical or virtual thumbs down. So if we can, again, commit to these group agreements, and of course, committee means that we'll have community shared accountability to holding ourselves individually accountable to these as well as collectively. It looks like it's James. I see your comment in the chat box. And it looks like we have all thumbs up, and that would include Valley Vision, CSS team, all of us as well. Great. Well, then I will take a step back, and I think, Evan, I'm passing it back over to you as we move forward.
All right, thank you so much for that, Belle, and thanks everybody for taking a minute to think about how it is we're going to be together and how we're all going to show up. I also thank you for adding your introductions into the chat. And I saw that one of our new members also joined as we were going through that, James Corliss. James, everybody who is new this month, introduce themselves, just name, organization, where you are in the region. So if you're able, I'd love to give you a chance to do that.
I just ate a cookie. You're going to put me on the spot now? I mean, greetings, everybody. Really nice to be here. I'm James Corliss. I'm Executive Director of the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, or SACOG. Delighted to be with this esteemed group and look forward to the work ahead.
Thank you, James. And maybe you've reminded everybody else, if they have cookies available to them, to go ahead and get a cookie. Why not? All right, well, we're going to move into the next portion of our agenda to talk a little bit about where we've been and set some context and recap what we did in January. So we'll start with that, with the January recap. A great way to do that is to make sure we've all had our eyes on the minutes and that we're all in agreement with how our meeting was documented. So we can go to that next slide. And this is our first opportunity as a body to take action because we want to make sure that that we all feel like this is an accurate representation of the meeting last month. And hopefully you all had a chance to review them in your packet. So I'll first leave just a moment for any comments or discussion before we move on to ask for a vote on this. And I see a note from Sam that you'll be abstaining, and I understand there was a few people who weren't here, so that makes sense. All right, so I'll start with asking if anybody has any concerns or is not in a position to approve the minutes. I'll leave a second for that. And then everybody who would like to accept these minutes, go ahead and say aye or raise your hand. Anyone who's abstaining, please go ahead and put that into the chat. I see that a number of you already have. I have not heard any nays, and so with that, we'll approve the minutes, and thank you for taking the time to do that. Let's go on to the next slide, please. All right, in this portion, I want to do a little bit of context setting to get us all kind of in the same lane as we think about why we're here and what this program is and what we're really trying to accomplish. So I'm going to take a few minutes to do that. So as part of the California Jobs First effort is a statewide effort. And as part of that, we are crafting and creating our own goals and our own program for the Capital Region. And so that's our We Prosper Together platform for the Capital Region. And we have are really four major goals of what we're trying to accomplish during this planning phase of the program. So first, it's to foster a collaborative, and that is you all are representative of that collaborative, but the actual like full collaborative body behind California Jobs First for our region is over 140 organizations. Next, we need to co-design a regional roadmap. So we're really building a vision and a roadmap towards inclusive economic growth. And the research that we're doing, the community engagement that we're working on, all of this effort right now is really anchored in creating that vision for our region. And once we create that vision, we want to attract investments into our region. This is an incredibly important part of this program, that we are able to tap into the California Jobs First funding, but much larger than that, that we're able to attract other types of investments to support the vision that we're putting forward for our whole 8 counties. So we want to be able to look to federal, state, philanthropic, private dollars to support this vision that we're building. And then finally, the North Star for the California Jobs First program is to create accessible living wage jobs. So that is a key part of inclusive economic growth. And we are tied to that goal of really creating those high quality jobs for our region. Next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit about what our activities to date have been, and I don't want to spend a ton of time reading this whole slide to you, but the first thing I'll do is kind of point you to this bar at the top that has systems building and then strategy development and activation. And I would note that this program for our region really started a little less than a year ago in spring 2023. And we spent much of 2023 doing this system building to try to kind of get all systems go as we think about how are we building this engine of creating this collaborative vision for inclusive economic growth. So that included building up our collaborative. It included bringing on our partners and launching both the research and communication efforts. It was also bringing on more partners across our whole 8-county region to support strategy building and community engagement at the local level. It was conducting that economic assessment research that you're going to hear more about later today, really kicking off our sub-regional activities. And then, of course, applying for the Catalyst Fund. That's the phase 2 of the California Jobs First effort. We have received word, I think since we all met last time, that our region has been approved with our proposal for the Catalyst Fund, which means there'll be an additional $9 million coming into the capital region to support capacity development for the priorities that we identify as part of this planning process. So that's really exciting. And that really helps anchor us in the work that we're doing in this planning phase, right? We know there's resources on the other end to really highlight those, to highlight the key priorities that we're able to build out and articulate as part of this vision. So as we've gotten into this year, so winter 2023, and now we're moving into, the spring and summer 2024, we're pivoting into this strategy development and activation phase. So we built all the systems, we brought on the partners, we kind of got all the discovery and launching going, and now we're really taking the information and the systems that we put together last year, and we're pointing that towards building our strategies and activating some of our key ideas. And so the Leadership Council is a big part of that. The fact that we met for the first time last month was a very exciting milestone for this project, because we really see this body and you all as decision makers as a key part of how we're going to activate the strategy. We're getting into the stage where we want to disseminate the research. We've launched our communications. Our sub-regional partners are in the heart of their community engagement and getting into strategy building at the local level across our 8 counties. And then that's all moving towards completing this economic roadmap and then launching the Catalyst program to start funding and building capacity towards our big vision that we create together. So a note that it's written here as our regional plan part 2. That's very state jargony, but I'll say our economic roadmap is due at the end of August. And so we're really tagging a lot of our activities to having this vision and this plan created by the end of the summer. So that's just a little bit to talk about where we've been, where we are, where we're trying to go as part of this planning phase of the California Jobs First program. Next slide, please. A couple of really important activities that are running in parallel with the work that you're doing is first of all, building our project pipeline and conducting our sub-regional activities. So on the project pipeline piece, we see the first step of that of building a project inventory. So building a set of projects that are consistent with the goals of the California Job First program and the goals that we're setting out as a region. And we anchored those a little while ago, building high quality jobs, creating inclusive, equity-centered economic growth for our region. So we have just launched this tool. It's on our website now, and I think somebody just shared it in the chat. But this is a project inventory form that we're asking people to complete. It's a pretty fast and easy form. It's supposed to be a pretty low barrier to entry, but this is really going to help us as a region build out our strategies. We're anticipating being able to do some matchmaking to start to look at, the projects that are coming up in Yuba County and how are they matching with projects that are coming up in Nevada County, and how do we start to put people together in order to leverage, grow, and really create some traction with some of the key projects and strategies that we want to advance. So this is a really key tool to allow us to be able to do that. We're excited to launch it, and we would love any support that you can give us with communicating this out to your networks and helping kind of champion this effort to really build out this inventory for our region of all the great ideas and projects that people have in mind that could support this type of work. Next, the sub-regional committee meetings and community gatherings to identify the barriers, opportunities, and ideas to build this inclusive process. So we have committee meetings happening in our sub-geographies, which you see on the slide here. Those are happening monthly, but then our sub-regional partners are doing work in community engagement and other ways to help get this sense of where are our local communities in this work. What are people sharing as the opportunities they see, the challenges they see? And then our leadership council is going to have, a real partnership with those sub-regional hubs as we intake that information and start to really integrate that into how we're thinking about building strategies for inclusive economic growth. And so that piece of our engagement is still coming up in the next few months, because those sub-regional partners are right in the middle of doing their community engagement efforts. So as we get into more like April and May, you're going to see our sub-regional partners, and they're going to be sharing with you what they've heard on the ground and the way they're building a sense of what are the needs in our local communities. Next slide, please. We want to support your ability to participate in these activities. And I believe you saw this outlined in our operating procedures, but I wanted to note it here today as well, that we have capacity assistance funding for you that, and you can see the specific information about what that is here on the slide, but it's really a stipend that helps account for and support your time that you're putting into these efforts. And you can see Gustavo's email address here on the slide. Please get in touch with him, and he'll walk you through how you can take advantage of this assistance funding. And I really invite you to do that. We really want to help support you and your full participation and show our appreciation for your work here. Next slide, please. Okay.
Evan, before you jump to me, there is a question in the chat from Devin that should be a quick answer. It's just, is there a deadline for the project inventory form?
I believe there is not an articulated deadline. I see this as a relatively open-ended effort as we're moving towards the Catalyst Fund. I will note that it's not an application. It's not a particular or it's not geared towards an application process yet. But we do hope to, as part of the Catalyst program, have an RFP and kind of help use this information to shape towards applications. But as of now, it's an open-ended opportunity, and I don't believe that we have identified a cutoff date for that. And I see Martessa answering in chat as well. Okay. Unless there's other questions, and I'm happy to answer them, I will turn it over to Richard Dana, who's going to talk a little bit about the activities of the Leadership Council.
Evan, so appreciate it. And hey, everybody, it's good to see everybody. One of the items that we're going to have on an ongoing basis for the agenda is going to be Leadership Council activities. And as such, these are going to be areas that you all are engaged in. So next slide, please. One of them we presented it to you inside your packet. Item number 4, page number 10, in case you're following at home, which I'm not sure you are, but just in case, so you can look it up. What we recognized is that we're all operating, you all are operating under a set guideline, operating procedures that were created back in May of 2023. A group called the Launch Committee, some of you here today were part of the Launch Committee, did a fantastic job of going through and creating a great review and list of operating procedures based on the information we knew at that time. And quite honestly, stuff has changed a lot since then. Not only did the Catalyst Initiative not even exist at that point in time, but we've also found, figured out we have some better understanding of the role of the Leadership Council as we look at things like strategic industry and moving projects forward. So we wanted to take a minute to recommend that there's an ad hoc committee to go through and review specific items, to come back to this committee with some recommendations for adjustments. And let me give you an example of what's in the operating procedures that you would be thinking about right away. For example, is it actually says in there, if you've read them, that the Leadership Council will provide written reports on progress to Valley Vision. I just don't think that's going to happen in that capacity. We're not designed that way. So there's some items in there that we want to go through. We will be able to support anybody who volunteers for this committee in identifying areas to look at right away. But first, I want to see if we can get approval to have an ad hoc committee. This would be a short-term committee, 4 to 6 weeks. We'd really be asking folks to meet one time to go through this. So let me follow Evan's lead when she did the minutes and ask if there's any questions or concerns or thoughts that are raised that we want to make sure are heard. And I'm looking for hands, and I'm looking for items in the chat. Not seeing anything. So how about, could I ask for a thumbs up on that we can form an ad hoc committee for this? Thumbs up, whether it's a physical or an emoji thumbs up would be great. Thank you. Anybody who is a thumbs down? Let me ask that. Make sure. Okay. Now comes the really fun part. I am going to be asking if we can get a few folks, maybe 5, to volunteer. I know it's not the most sexy item in the world, but it would be great. Oh, Malachi, I'm sorry. I just see you have a hand raised. I didn't see it before.
Oh, no problem, Richard. Greetings, everyone. I just raised my hand on the question on the table because I'm not entirely sure about making a decision on this operating procedures in ad hoc committee. I think we do need to have operating procedures, but I just am kind of wondering, what would the process be for this council to perhaps ratify whatever happens in the ad hoc committee?
Good question. So the consideration was that the ad hoc committee would go through the operating procedures as they're written today and make recommendations, but bring it back to the full Leadership Council for full approval, so that nothing would go through without the full approval of the Leadership Council.
Okay, okay. And you did indicate that this draft of operating procedures is in the packet that went out today?
It is,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Oh, okay. Cool.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. And I'm going to be sending out the email that's going to say like, please join. But if you're interested in joining, please put your name in the chat. We would like to have 5 folks. I am gonna don't make me call you out like individually one by one, as I know some of you that, to get your help on this, but I already see some names coming in, so thank you. Because we want to make sure that we get a real good eyes on this and a real good look. Please put your name in the chat if you want to continue, if you want to be a part of it. I will call out some folks later, not in this meeting, I promise you. Let's move ahead to the next slide because I want to make sure we get to the next pieces. I do want to just note the other activity that's occurring is we have some open seats still. This was brought up the last meeting for the Leadership Council, and we have those seats listed here. We are missing one person from the Yuba County Sutter subregion. We need our tribal entities to be represented more fully. Same with labor and also with businesses. So if you know folks that might be interested in this, you can use the QR code right there and the packet will come up. We would love to have these folks on board before we're making any decisions around strategy, industry strategy, and et cetera. Looking ahead so we can make sure our leadership council is full. And thanks to everybody who put your name in the chat. Super appreciate it. We've got a full committee now. I appreciate you all very much. Evan, I'm going to pass it back to you. Next slide, please. And move us forward on what is the meat of the day.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll have us remember back to January as we start to get oriented towards what we're going to really be working on today. And that is that we had our city's GPS partners walking us through a lot of data about the region. And one aspect of that data is looking in depth at our tradable industries. And I'm going to let Merrick and Chad talk a little bit more about what that is and why it's important. But I wanted to set just a little bit of context first. First of all, really acknowledging that in our first 2 meetings here, we've got a lot of quantitative data that we're throwing at you. And that is one aspect of economic development and inclusive economic development, but it's not the only thing, right? This is one input. And it's going to be really important as we move along this process to surface community perspective and preferences, to understand from the ground up what are the challenges that people are facing, and then to really start to shape what do inclusive pathways really look like. And if we're thinking about high quality jobs, what does that mean for people in disinvested communities, and how does that really translate to changing people's lives? So I know that this is these are all there. That is kind of a holistic look at all the things that we're going to want to consider as we walk down this path together. And we're starting with the data. And part of that is because as we build a strategy, it's important that we're building a common understanding of some of the more technical pieces of this, and also that we understand kind of the regional economic landscape and what are some of the factors and the levers that help impact our ability to fulfill high quality jobs, both in terms of putting people in them and then creating them. And tradable industries is a really important part of that. So I wanted to set that context because I don't want you to think that the only thing we're doing as part of this effort is analyzing quantitative data and talking about tradable industries. It is an important part of economic development, and there are other important parts that we are also going to be focused on as we move down this path together. And so Merrick and Chad are going to come on in a minute, and they're going to walk us through first what are tradable industries, and then what does the data look like in our region. And it's going to create a really important foundation for us, and then we're going to start to layer on other things along with that foundation. The other thing that's really important about us focusing on tradable industries is that we have some decisions that we're going to be asked to make as part of the state program. So as part of the Catalyst Fund and part of the work they're asking us to do, they want us to identify 3 or 4 key industry sectors that we're trying to grow as a region. And so understanding the sectors that we have in our local economy and in what the role of tradable sectors is in that landscape is a really important part of how we're going to make decisions around priority industries. And it's really this body, this group of people, with some partnership and some recommendations and other inputs, but you all are going to be the ones that are helping advance that decision. And so we want to make sure that we are speaking in a common language, and we're kind of starting by surfacing the information and data that we have on hand to share with you, that will lend to strategy building. So when we talk about the decision path that we're on, to say a couple other things, I will note that today this is really about learning. This is really about like setting a, kind of setting a common framework for all of us, learning more about tradable industries, sharing and surfacing any immediate thoughts, opportunities, concerns that might come up for you as we do this. We have next month to talk about it again. And again, we'll be bringing other types of inputs in as well, but we'll have, another meeting to clarify and to kind of bring together anything else that we need to. And then by the time we get to April, we're going to be making some decisions about what industry sectors we want to prioritize, and we'll make sure that you're clear on what's the significance of that. What does that mean as we move forward in the planning with the program? So I'm happy to pause if anybody has any quick questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to our research partners to walk us through the information about tradable industries, and then we will have a chance as a group to talk about that as well. All right, and not seeing any questions coming up, and there will be time after the presentations to surface other questions. I'm going to turn it over to Merrick and Chad. Thank you for being with us again, and I'll let you get into tradable industry clusters.
Thanks. Yeah, so hopefully we'll be defining tradable industries, because that's my job. So at the end of this, if we have not done that effectively, then I have not accomplished my goal. I don't need to see my face anymore, so could you switch? Perfect. So last time we were all together, and I think most of you all were part of this discussion, we spent a lot of time talking about the kind of tensions in defining and interacting around comprehensive regional inclusive economic initiatives. And we didn't get fully into how you think about the economy, some of the objectives, and the points that were raised here about where focus might be, based on not just data, but also a lot of qualitative outreach that we conducted during this discovery phase, and input from a wide range of public, private, community, civic, or educational actors that contribute to economic outcomes, and access to opportunity. So I just want to echo Evan's point here at the start, which is a part of this effort is an emphasis of interest for the state, because they want to organize their own economic activities around focusing on sectors that are really generating opportunity, quality jobs, and are competitive across the state, and how they align their investments. So, and a very explicit part of this is how to where sectors or industry categories are that regions can focus on because of certain advantages. But there's a lot of other elements that are about participating in the economy that are not sector specific. So in thinking about an outline of what a strategic plan looks like, there'd be a sector specific orientation to that, but also other elements like talent access to other kinds of jobs versus the ones that are being influenced by economic development. Or we talked before about childcare availability, or entrepreneurship that is more locally based, and the support systems around that to enable wealth building for residents. So I just want to re-highlight that point, that this is not all about traded sectors, but the economic development orientation has got to deal with these traded sectors, and we'll explain why, and Chad will go a lot more detail on that. But because we didn't get a ton of time to talk about like the framework, I just want to really quickly highlight a couple of points that lead us into this traded sector description and discussion. The first is, again, how this whole effort of California Jobs First is reorienting the definition of economic success and expectations for economic development outcomes. So the traditional approach to economic development and what economic developers were expected to produce was kind of that growth category. Are we creating more jobs, or can we associate ourselves with creating more jobs? Are we generating more economic activity in the region? Is there more capital expenditure? Are we having new establishments formed in the region and new businesses? But growth for itself is does not generate inclusive outcomes. And there's also, growth for growth's sake is also the ideology of a cancer cell. So what we're trying to do is orient other things, other outcomes for economic development success that incorporate improving the competitiveness of employers so that they can offer more higher value, higher wage jobs, and can grow from within in the region in those areas that concentrate opportunity. And then who benefits from effective economic growth that's emphasizing quality jobs? Is that both distributed by demographics and geography and ensuring that job access? So the full success measures that we're oriented to is what's going to influence higher quality job creation and job access for residents in a region. And that's the objective that all the strategy and tactics should focus on. Next slide, please. The other thing that we talked about a lot, and just want to re-highlight here, and there's a lot of words on this, and you'll be getting the deck afterward, but was that difference in where the emphasis is for strategies? Is it regional? Is it local? Is it community? And the distinctive feature of California Jobs First was looking at the regional economy versus neighborhoods. So a regional economic development, this is where sectors comes in, is defined by a functional economic area. That's what kinds of workforce we share, what industry mix is related and concentrated in a particular place, what kinds of businesses are there in the trade sectors that I'll define, what kind of infrastructure do we have that hangs together regardless of political jurisdictions on a map. So the things that we emphasize or target at a regional level are growth in kind of common sector opportunities, industries, businesses that relate to each other, sort of international engagement, the kinds of things that work at a scale that really is higher level than individual local political jurisdictions. Local economic development is more at the city or county level, and its influences that those jurisdictions have directly around site selection or land use, permitting, facilities like investment in business parks or industrial parks. Also support for entrepreneurship that's more localized with like Main Street businesses versus high growth knowledge firms that might be tied to more of the regional economic opportunities. And then finally, there's community development, which is really neighborhood based. And a lot of that can offer up opportunities for individuals to be supported and access jobs, but also it's like corridor redevelopment, amenities, businesses that you need to see for quality of life and vitality in a community. So that's kind of placemaking, location, and quality of life factors for community residents. So you can see that there are very different things that are being addressed at each of these levels with different kinds of organizations and outcomes. And the California Jobs First is oriented toward how are we investing in regional economic opportunities and linking residents to those. Next slide, please. Just a reminder on how that falls out and drives both what we did in discovery phase and what can influence economic outcomes for job quality and job access. Again, this emphasis on traded sectors and entrepreneurship, but that also means entrepreneurship, wealth building for the more localized activities that I mentioned can be supported regionally, like Main Street firms, but generate ownership and wealth for residents. And then talent and innovation as moving and supporting those economic areas, and then enabled by infrastructure, barriers to access, language, transportation, childcare that unlocks talent potential, and then governance, which is how all the different organizations kind of work together in order to implement things. So you've got economic developers over here, you have talent providers and education training providers over here, you've got community organizations that can link up people to opportunities. All of those, how they fit together is could be fragmented or could be really efficient. And I think the outcome of this is to target activities so that we can be more efficient and effective of connecting up all those resources toward the same goal by choosing that goal and all rowing in that direction. The California Jobs First explicitly looks at climate and environment, both as an economic opportunity and an impact choice, and then also public health implications. Next slide. And the last thing, and I won't go into excruciating detail about this, but Chad will highlight how some of these activities or strengths in the region lead to sector-based choices. And that involves like what market demand is generated, what your innovation activities, what they're really supporting. But at the center of this is moving from what is possible with our economic strengths, emerging and existing, to what is preferable. And that's what community interests are, really concentrating an effort around where job quality can be generated and accessed within the region, and what the impacts are, and as I said, preferences are for community among what's doable. So it's all about ultimately making choices, and the information or these focus are showing the menu of what makes sense. We think that we can generate in an economy that's all oriented toward job quality, and then what people prefer to see based upon factors that are influencing, again, quality of life, or where they want to hope to have opportunity in their neighborhoods and their localities. Next slide. So what do we mean by traded versus local serving? I think we talked a little bit about this at the last session, but traded sectors or industries are those where you're selling principally your goods and services to somebody outside of your economic area. It can be some other place in California. It could be somewhere internationally. It can be someplace, another state or metropolitan area. But the kinds of activities they're doing are more oriented toward things that serve people from outside the region versus the demands of local customers. So looking at the left, and some of these, can be a little bit fluid, but looking at the left side, things like manufacturing, I am involved in information technology and services, life sciences in terms of pharmaceutical products, or agriculture and plant sciences. Those kinds of activities on the left are what you tend to do in traded efforts. That also includes agriculture, because you're sending your products outside the region, and food processing that gets sold outside the region, as well as tourism and higher education, to the extent that people are visiting from outside the region, even though the transaction happens within the region. Locally serving, things like I'm selling coffee, or you go to a restaurant, I'm building local homes or facilities, construction and real estate. A lot of utilities are generally serving within activities within a region versus exporting outside. Education, like local education, basically what you think about when you need a service because I live here. Healthcare always comes up as a question, and healthcare in most regions is really locally serving because it's driven by a population, and I need healthcare because I live here, versus somebody from outside a region coming in to get healthcare, and that would make it more traded. Again, there's some gray areas in certain categories can be both local serving and traded, and vice versa. But the general landing point for these kinds of activities is more in one category or the other. Next slide. So why is this so important to think about traded sectors for regional economic development? And it breaks down to 4 different things that distinguish these kinds of activities from local serving. The first is around job creation and wealth building. So as I said, if you're trading or you're selling your goods and services outside of the region, it brings new money in, and then it circulates to other activities that are locally serving. If you just have funds circulating within your local economy, you're not growing it and you're not growing wealth. So the idea of bringing new money into a region is really critical for expanding economic activity and growth. Second, that wealth that comes in spurs a multiplier effect. And that is, for every traded sector kind of job, you actually generate a lot of locally serving jobs. And that ranges, it can be relatively low, for example, in agricultural production, crop production, but it can be very high in sort of tech jobs where you're generating some estimates in categories are like for every 1 tech job, you can actually generate 5 local serving jobs. So the idea of traded sectors is growing the economy and opportunities across the economy versus the bang for your buck you get in terms of local serving activities. These kinds of traded sector functions also anchor other traded sector functions. So you're growing them because they're serving each other within a system. Yes, a lot of trade comes across of inputs come across from other places to be part of the value or supply chain within another region. But you see really sort of suppliers around traded sectors clustering within that region and growing attracted to that region in a particular sector strength. So that's a really high value return if you're growing that traded sector and its relationships. And the last thing is about how influenceable economic development is in growing these kinds of activities. A lot of local serving, including healthcare, can't be influenced by some kind of an economic development activity. It's growing because the population is growing, or a certain part of the population is demanding something. Most regions are growing a lot in locally serving because people are moving there and they want to buy a house and fill their house with goods. They're going to more restaurants more. And if you're expanding your population, the demand for healthcare is increasing. So those are things that are not influenced by economic development specific activities versus, say, in manufacturing. You can really do some supports that enable manufacturing to grow through problem solving, innovation, talent pipelines, and other things that will generate more of it versus relying on what local demand is just going to naturally create. The second area that makes traded sectors really important is that they concentrate higher quality jobs. And if you see in some of the information, but it's hard to read here, but the second bar down shows what is the split between opportunity jobs. That's how we qualified jobs that are enabling people to make ends meet, be financially stable, and get ahead a little bit, versus other jobs which don't offer those benefits or the economic opportunity for workers. And you'll see that the split between traded sector opportunity jobs and those that are not is roughly 50%. And then you see the third line down, which is the locally serving jobs. The proportion there is more than 2/3 of them are not enabling people to get ahead. So what we want to try to do is emphasize the growth in those traded sector jobs because they pay higher wages and benefits. They also, on the whole, invest more in workers and in their skill sets. So there's a lot more development of the talent pipeline and the talent base that's created through these kind of traded sectors. This varies, though, because we have sort of some categories like agriculture and hospitality or tourism that are considered traded, but don't have the same characteristics as these other traded sector jobs. And in fact, the heavy presence of some of those kinds of jobs in the region makes that traded sector quality job balance versus other jobs actually more even when taking out some of those lower performing in terms of job quality sectors would jack that number up even more. The last two are a little bit more high level versus direct impact on employers and workers. One is traded sectors are, in order to be competitive, you've got to naturally pursue more creativity and innovation and improve productivity, which generally then yields higher wages. And they're through their interaction with other places and competition in other markets, they tend to be more innovative in adopting and identifying new technologies and creating knowledge. And then the final point is about diversification and resilience. So if you have an emphasis on growing traded sectors, you're less dependent or reliant on the growth of local market conditions, which when things happen in the economy, then you're more balanced in terms of how that impacts you. The more diversified and engaged in external trade you are, then the better off you tend to be in dealing with bumps in the economy that are disruptive. They also tend to spin off new sectors and opportunities, and they're really targets for foreign direct investments. And that's particularly important because those kinds of companies generate higher wages and are more productive. So they support economic growth that's really quality growth that's accessible to residents. I will stop now, and I assume there are a bunch of questions that may have piled up here in the chat, but that maybe hopefully gives you a better perspective on why traded sectors are such a big emphasis of effort vis-a-vis other opportunity areas in growing the economy or addressing more local or neighborhood-based economic activities.
Thank you, Merrick. Amazing information. And wow, it's a lot to take in for folks. I know that. So what we've designed for you now is a few minutes for you to kind of, log up your thoughts, your questions, maybe raise some comments that will help guide us in terms of potential questions we can answer and what we can bring back to you in the next sessions so that we can continue to build out on this information for you. So to do this, we have a short I see Belle just put it in the chat. If you go to the chat, you'll see we have a short Padlet activity for all of us. It's 4 very, very brief questions, and we'd invite you to click on that and begin answering some of those questions so we can start to see some thoughts and get your feedback on what you just heard from Merrick. Belle, would you like to provide any additional instructions?
Thanks, Richard. So we did drop in the link into the chat, so hopefully you can click on that. The Padlet link, it's a user-friendly platform for us to just capture, as Richard mentioned, some initial reflections and processing of the information that Merrick has so graciously provided and presented. I'm going to pull up the Padlet link if I could. Share screen. Beautiful, thank you. Just so that you all can see the link and we can see some wonderful icons there on the top, meaning that you will have opened up the link. Again, some initial reflections and processing of the information around tradable industries. We like to say the little plus sign is your friend, and you can see that there. You simply click on it. It'll allow you to capture your thoughts here. They're all anonymous. You all can provide your information here and kind of centering us back to our group agreements. Again, what's learned here leaves here, but we want to offer up space for, again, you all to just provide some initial reflections and processing of the information presented. We will keep these links open. but think of this as a bit of a virtual flip chart or journal book. Again, just to capture your additional thoughts, reflections, and processing of information. The prompts are there to help guide, and we also have just kind of an overall general, any additional reflections that you can click and include there. I think, Richard, we're offering about five
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah, about 5 minutes. This padlock will stay up. So if you just need a moment to process and absorb, you don't have to put anything in there. You can go back to it later. It does give you a chance to start to see what your colleagues here are, your fellow council members are thinking about. So we're going to let you do your thing for a few minutes. And I'll note I'm seeing some comments coming through, additional ones even now. Make sure you have a couple more minutes as you're processing your thoughts.
So just a quick question for Belle. Under, for example, what questions remain on the Padlet? Are we going, so basically you go up to the, this is it, you hit the plus sign to add, okay. Plus sign to add posts, all right. I'm just
Perfect.
trying
No,
to figure
great
out.
question. I'm glad you asked. Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks.
We need one of my 20-year-old sons to be here to help us all with technology sometimes.
Yeah, I see a lot of good questions popping up, for example, about, our traded sectors or traded industries requiring more education and training. And that, I think Chad will get into that in some of our factors for selection or targeting of these industries and which ones are more accessible to middle income jobs. So I think that there are a lot of points in here, some of which we've gotten to, and some of which we, and displacement workers, etc. Yeah, so I think we can address some of these topics, and then there are others that'll have to be, factored in during the strategy development phase too.
Marek, I agree 100%. So we're going to go for about 1 more minute. Chad, you're going to be coming up next to talk about industry clusters. And one thing to keep in mind as we're looking at this is that, as Evans mentioned, we're kind of in step 1, kind of beginning to absorb all the information, looking at information coming from different pathways, including not just the data research components, but also how our sub-region hubs are bringing community information back to us. And you'll all be receiving presentations in the future from the sub-region hubs, thinking about how barriers and other obstacles are preventing us from using some of this information and what we need to collectively move towards. So a lot of this right now is just information gathering, and then we can start to move into some active considerations and strategies. The goal for this one right now is to really get your thoughts and questions so we can help build out the next phases for you in terms of information sharing. This Padlet will stay up for all of you as questions come up and thoughts. We're going to transition over to Chad to take us through the next set of information. We'll have another brief Padlet afterwards, and then a chance for comments and thoughts. Brief time for comments and thoughts, and I apologize. We'll lift up your involvement much more in future meetings. With this one, we're trying to get our feet grounded a little bit. All right, Chad, I'm going to move it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. And it's good to see you all again. As a reminder, I'm Chad Shear. I'm heading up a lot of the quantitative analysis that Cities GPS and our bookings team are doing to support the Capital Region California Jobs First project. And I'm happy to be talking to you all again today about some of this wealth of information that we've assembled to support your decision making. As Richard mentioned, my purpose here today is to talk about the clusters identification. So how we kind of prioritize different industries or clusters of industries for California Jobs First, or for our job growth efforts. And before I get there, I just want to center us a little bit about around some of the other data that we previewed in January, the last time we met in person together. So at that meeting, I kind of walked us through some of these 7 implications that are coming out of the both quantitative and qualitative analysis that our team has done to support this project. And some of the findings that we reviewed included that really what we're aiming to do through this project is invest in quality jobs and expand career pathways to those quality jobs. And so I just want to back up for a second and just remind us that we have a huge population of workers and other individuals that belong to families that struggle to make ends meet, despite the fact that they have at least one adult worker in the family. So 28%, or close to 1 million residents of the Capital Region, do struggle to make ends meet for their families, despite having at least one worker in the home. And another almost 11% struggle to make ends meet, though they do not have any workers in the home. And so this leaves us with just a really huge population of people who are really striving to get by and just not quite making it. And what we've done is looked at who these people are, who the workers are in these families, to understand what kinds of backgrounds they have, for one thing, but also what kinds of labor force characteristics or assets they may be bringing to the labor market that are just going unappreciated. So one thing that we know is that a majority of these workers are prime age workers. That means that they're aged between 25 years and 54 years. So these are when most people in society are working. So about 2/3 of our struggling workers are that prime age. And another thing that we can say about them is that they do have the kind of, the years of, or they could have the years of workplace experience that they need to really, compete for higher wages in this economy. The other thing that we know about them is that most of them do have post-secondary credentials, either some college or an associate's degree or even a bachelor's degree. Many or almost all actually have a high school diploma as well. So we know that the workers in these families do have actually quite considerable human capital that they can be bringing to the labor market and using to compete for high-wage jobs. The challenge, we think, is that there just aren't enough of these quality jobs in the region. We've assessed the kind of the job quality among various industries in the Capital Region, and we find that about 35% of jobs in the region are quality jobs. That means they pay a livable wage. They provide employer-sponsored healthcare, which is a proxy for other types of benefits. And these quality jobs are durable quality jobs. That means they're not going to be shipped to China or replaced by technology anytime soon. They're going to be here for the duration. We assess that another 18% of jobs in the region will lead to these quality jobs in the future. That means they're not quality jobs today, but these jobs do provide career pathways to quality jobs in the future. What we're trying to figure out is how do we grow the number or increase the share of jobs in this region that are quality jobs or will lead to a quality job. And we can increase promising jobs by growing more quality jobs. We can also just get more people into quality jobs by having more quality jobs. And so this is really what we assess to be the primary kind of obstacle to more of those struggling workers finding a foothold in the economy that allows them to adequately support their families. Now, one thing that we talked about last month is just the huge quality jobs gap that we have. 334,000 struggling workers are looking for a quality job in this region that just does not exist. This is basically the number of struggling workers who don't have a quality job subtracted and minus the number of good jobs in the region. And that gives us this gap of 334,000 jobs. Of course, most of those are in Sacramento and Yolo counties, which are the two largest areas of the economy. But we have significant jobs gaps in every subregion, Placer and El Dorado, Yuba and Sutter, Colusa, and Nevada. So what do we do about it? Well, we're suggesting a two-pronged approach. One is to invest in strategic industry clusters that can grow more good jobs. The other thing that we want to focus on, though, is improving job quality in sectors that maybe we don't want to grow or prioritize as strategic industry priorities. In addition to improving job quality in those other industries, we also need to improve access to those jobs. And we're going to talk more about both of these in a moment. The way we've gone about trying to figure out what's worth prioritizing and what's worth improving is looking at industries through this prism of clusters. And for those of you who are new to economic development, I'm just going to take a moment to describe what we mean by clusters. If you think about, a particular industry, say making farm equipment, the business that makes farm equipment depends on a whole bunch of other industries to produce a final tractor. It needs screws, it needs wheels, it needs tires. And so when we think about clusters of industries, we're thinking about all of the mini industries that help create that tractor. Or share similar labor pools, the people who, machinists and assemblers who kind of embody the shared labor that goes into all of those industries to make the tractor. So what we're trying to do with our clusters analysis is figure out how we can identify where those types of trade relationships between the tire manufacturer and the tractor maker actually exist at the sub-regional level so that we can group those together and then identify where we have some synergies that we can leverage to grow the economy. So the way we've identified clusters in this region involves a few different aspects. One is just assessing those local value chains, understanding the amount of trade that happens between two industries in the region, and then figuring out how we group them together based on the strength of those trade relationships. The second one is talent adjacencies. So how much do two industries share the same talent pool or talent demand? And that can tell us that they actually are quite similar in terms of maybe not what they're making, but at least how they're making it, or kind of what kind of human capital they need to make those things. The third is innovation and scaling. So this is just kind of close reading some data that we have on R&D strengths to understand how certain industries are synergistic based on the kind of knowledge that they create and the innovation that they're leading on. And the last is then kind of looking at these clusters of industries that we've identified through these three other analyses to figure out how they align with some strategic priorities for this region. And I'm going to describe all of this in a little bit greater depth. So first, we did all of these clusters analysis to figure out how individual industries like the tractor maker actually cluster together with other industries like the tire maker. And we came up with this hierarchy of all of these industries and how they cluster together at various levels of aggregation. And at the highest level of aggregation, we have this kind of bifurcated economy where we're looking at tradable clusters or clusters of tradable industries versus local serving clusters. So on the local serving cluster side, we have things like community services, which includes arts and entertainment, utilities, financial services, like your community bank, facilities management. So that's things like janitors and facilities maintenance, and civic organizations. We also have healthcare, retail, your local grocery store, all of that. And then on the tradable cluster side, we have manufacturing, and we have manufacturing of machinery. So that's where the tire manufacturer goes. We have precision manufacturing, which is where we make microelectronics, like, the things that Intel and Hewlett Packard have made in the region, metal products manufacturing. And then we have business services and technical services and all of that. This wheel, or this hierarchy that we're describing, has been done at the sub-regional level in each of your subregions, and now we're aggregating it up to see what this looks like for the entire region. But if we go and look at, say, what this looks like for Yuba and Sutter counties, we see that it leads to a completely different hierarchy, where some things get more emphasized. Now, this is just to show you kind of how that clustering works and kind of how we're grouping industries together. Now, what we need to do is apply some filters to understand which of these clusters of industries are actually really strategic for achieving some goals around inclusive and prosperous growth. So we're applying some filters to this. First, we're saying, if we want to prioritize an industry or cluster of industries to grow in this economy, we want those industries to be tradable. And we want them to be tradable for all the reasons that Merrick mentioned a few minutes ago. These are industries that are, for one thing, higher paying than the average industry. Second, they have higher job multipliers. So as these industries grow, we're going to see more job growth in local serving sectors as too, which is a net benefit for the economy. And third, these industries are really important for bringing new income and therefore new growth into the economy. So really, really strategic that we prioritize tradable industries to grow. Second, we want those industries to be sustainable. And I'm speaking here environmentally. And this is actually a requirement under California Jobs First that we prioritize carbon neutral and sustainable industries. Third, we want these industries to be opportunity rich. They have to have better job quality on average than other industries in the economy. And that ensures that as we're growing these industries, we are increasing the overall share of jobs in the economy that are quality jobs. Third, if we're going to spend public money or spend our very, limited time and resources on growing something, we want to make sure growing it is actually feasible. We don't want to spin our wheels or waste money trying to grow something that we just can't have in this region. And that means that we need to focus on industries that already have a really strong foothold here or are already growing faster than the national average in this region. So when we apply these filters to that wheel that I was just showing you a moment ago, we get some different kind of strategic industries that begin to pop out. And this is the same exhibit I was just showing you a moment ago with the hierarchy. It's just now shown in a slightly different format. So here we, again, have our bifurcation of local serving clusters versus tradable industries, and we've got all of our different industries arrayed around here in order of the number of, in this case, sales that they generate for the region. Now what I'm going to do is start applying some of those filters. So first, let's start with just quality jobs, so industries that concentrate quality jobs. Now we're looking at the number of jobs in different industries, and we can see here that actually most of our quality jobs are in local serving clusters, including health services and construction. We've got administrative services, community services, retail, financial services, education and training. And then on the tradable cluster side, we have business services, logistics, like moving agricultural materials around the region, agriculture and food, financial services, and so on. Now what we want to say is, okay, we're looking for quality and sustainable industries. So these are industries that are both, opportunity rich and environmentally sustainable. Let's take it one step further. Now let's just focus on the tradable ones, and one step further still, and just focus on the ones that meet all four criteria. Now we're looking at a set of industries or clusters of industries in the region that really meet all of our criteria for growing more quality jobs and creating inclusive economic growth and prosperity in this region. And furthermore, we can look at what this looks like at each subregion level. So for Colusa County, we see that ag and food is really the leading cluster priority. Agriculture, including farm support services, and particularly milling rice, not surprisingly, is a really big source of quality jobs and inclusive growth in Colusa County. We also have soybean and other oilseed processing. We logistics or food logistics also pops out here, as you know, especially around wholesale. And then we get more logistics industries, again, around wholesale, but also goods movement in Colusa County. And then we have other manufacturing, which is primarily printing, and building materials and furnishings, which are made out of the tremendous amount of lumber that is felled in this region and turned into all sorts of other wonderful things like windows for our homes or beams for our buildings. And then we've got a smaller set of services around business services. We've got this for each county. So Nevada County does look a little bit different. In Nevada County, tourism pops out as being the biggest area of jobs for inclusive growth and opportunity. We've also got business services opportunities, including technical services, management consulting. We've got precision manufacturing. It's a fairly small number of jobs, just 500 jobs, but we do have precision manufacturing in Nevada, other types of manufacturing, logistics again, and smaller ag and food sector there. Then we've got, of course, the kind of 4-county Sacramento, Roseville, Folsom metropolitan statistical area, where we've got business services as really the biggest area of opportunity, followed by logistics, then ag and food. And then in Yuba and Sutter counties, or the Yuba City metropolitan area, we have logistics, ag and food, machinery manufacturing, business services, some mining and extraction, precision manufacturing, and other manufacturing. So this does look a little bit different in each region, but we do find that kind of difference speaks to the distinctiveness of the opportunities and challenges of each of these sub-regional economies. Now, I do want to go back to one of our earlier filters where we're just looking at what's quality and what's sustainable. And I'm going to go back to the kind of full region look here to show that really local serving clusters really are a big deal. And we can see that when it comes to the local serving clusters that do concentrate those quality jobs and promising jobs, health and social services, especially healthcare, does really pop out as being the largest area. Construction also pops out. This is particularly important in Nevada County, in Placer County, where construction is not only booming, but it's a very opportunity-rich sector. Community services, including waste management, facilities management, that pops out here too. Business and administrative services, even retail, some retail sectors do come into this, and financial services. So when we're talking about that two-pronged approach, what we're saying is when we're talking about growing, we really want to put all of our chips on growing more quality jobs in tradable industries that concentrate them. But we can't forget about the huge number of jobs and opportunity in the rest of the economy in these local serving clusters. What we need to focus on is improving job quality in all local serving clusters, but also improving access to quality jobs in local serving clusters, particularly for the disadvantaged communities that are the focus of California Jobs First. So these are some of the essential ingredients and considerations. Now, when we come away with our look at all of this analysis overall, the cluster prior opportunities that we see in terms of growing more quality jobs really fall into 4 categories of ag and food tech, or what we're calling, or ag and food tech and kind of biomedical innovation, which are all kind of interrelated. This is all about R&D, and it's a particularly very big strength of this region. Also, working lands value chains, including the kind of upgrading the working lands industries that relate to ag and food, and also kind of innovating within these working lands value chains to prioritize, the circular economy and decarbonization. And then we've got another set of industries that are really what we're calling the kind of next industries, the kind of more future-oriented ones. And that relates to precision manufacturing of things like microelectronics, semiconductors, advanced instruments, automotive and transportation equipment, and aerospace equipment. And then finally, we have advanced business services and technical services, which relates to the kind of business and consulting services that support the state government, maybe primarily, but also can support businesses and job growth in other parts of the economy as well. We did do a kind of subsequent analysis to figure out how these things align with the different subregions, which are actually kind of opportunities for which subregions. And then finally, we did take a look at kind of which industries where we need to focus on for improving job quality and job access. So I don't have a ton of time to go through all of this, but maybe we can get into it in the Q&A. The last thing I want to talk about is something that somebody brought up in the Padlet, which is how accessible are jobs in these tradable industries? They sound kind of highfalutin and maybe inaccessible to the disadvantaged communities that we're talking about. This is something that we still need to study further, but one thing I do want to point out is that we did take a look at how our struggling workers' human capital aligns with the kind of human capital demands of quality jobs, and found that for the most part, at every level of educational attainment, struggling workers have most of the human capital that they need to compete successfully for a good job, which again goes back to this idea that really the challenge that we have is that there aren't enough good jobs, and it's too hard to connect disadvantaged communities to them. This is not a skills gap. Sure, there are some skills that we need to focus on training around. But overall, we really do need to create more good jobs and connect people to them. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Chad. Amazing. And again, this is like, as Chad, you could hear him at the very end running through it as fast as he could because it's so much information right now. But I think we got a really great base and taste, and we want to take a second again to let you kind of absorb this. Think about this for a second, and Belle, if you could throw the Padlet chat, we have a second Padlet for all of you to put into the chat to be able to start to put your thoughts down around a few key questions. We will give you a couple minutes to kind of do this. I loved what I saw in the last Padlet, questions about disadvantaged communities, subregions, how the data actually connects between existing and new, and you all are already spot on with a lot of your considerations and thoughts. Let's keep them coming. It helps us to really generate thoughts and comments coming ahead. Let's take a few minutes to go through to do this, and we're gonna then give ourselves a chance to just share if there's anything that's really resonating, questions and thoughts that you're seeing not only in the chat, but just you're feeling. You aren't even sure how to put it into the chat, into the Padlet necessarily. We'll give you some time for that in a minute, but because I know I'm feeling it. So let's go through that, and let's use the Padlet right now. I'm afraid to see all the raw data. Let me tell you, I'm with you there.
Richard, as people are adding to the Padlet, and since this has already been asked in the chat, I just want to say that the slides that I just went through you already have access to them. Valley Vision shared my presentation from January with this entire group following that meeting. And these slides that I've just gone through are drawn directly from that presentation. So do feel free to just get to that link and explore as you like.
Thank you, Chad. And one of the things that you're going to kind of see as we go through various meetings and opportunities to see the information is that a lot of information is there, and sometimes it's actually about how to dissect it and pull it out. So Chad's presentation today did a great job of kind of showing you how to use that information collectively. You keep going. I'm seeing some questions, some items coming in on the Padlet now. We're gonna go for just a couple more minutes. You can the Padlet will stay open, both of them will. So please feel free to continue as thoughts are coming about. So much information. I saw a question in there about meeting to digest, and I'm wondering maybe we might want to think about a in between data sort of I don't know, open house kind of thing, right? Allowing for some communication and questions because there's so much information.
Yeah, maybe we could set up like some office hour type structure for additional conversations.
So I still see items coming in, which is great. And I do, as we're doing this, I just want to highlight the work that Cities GPS has done to put all this together. This is what the planning phase was all about. Collecting all of this kind of data, this information is pretty amazing. And it's giving all of you the information tools along with what you're going to hear from your sub-region hubs and your communities to really make important and educated decisions. I want to also, as you're still working on the Padlets, I want to open it up though for anybody that's just wants to kind of like, state or throw out something that's really resonated with them through this conversation today, question that's come up that you just can't get rid of, thoughts, comments, or anything that we should take back in terms of additional material you need. And knowing how this group is not shy, I think we've got you in a good groove right now for sure. Rolls, yes, please.
As an organization that trades in tradable sector economic development, this was, obviously a lot of this resonated with me personally in the work that we do at GSAC. I think a couple of reflections on our end. I think number one, there's a tremendous amount of diversity within our region. I think that's showing up in the Padlet responses as well. And I think coming up with ways to identify how do we connect the sort of the macro level that we've just seen to the local level. And it is going to be a big challenge and task ahead of us. But also, I want to point out that a couple of tradable sector industries like tourism and hospitality, for example, really do show up everywhere, and that's something to at least look at. Where the strategy for that might be increasing job quality, right, versus the strategy for the R&D space, semiconductors, et cetera, is just getting more jobs here. And so these individual verticals at both the local and the regional level we're gonna have to be very sophisticated in the way that we develop approaches that are right for the industry. We don't need the semiconductor industry to produce better quality jobs. They can't get any better, trust me. I mean, so it's just that for that one, that's just a question of how do we get more of them here. Whereas there might be some of our tradable sectors, particularly within the manufacturing space and hospitality, for example, where we can have a quality job sort of elevation conversation at the local level. And I think it's going to be really exciting to see how we can do that.
Yeah, no, I would just echo that observation. There's the job creation, which is the trade sector, and then there's the job quality piece in two dimensions. One is that there are locally serving sectors, including big parts of healthcare, that offer up quality jobs, and there is a disconnect between the folks who are represented in that sector and the demand. So there's a question about that access point to locally serving quality jobs that don't, again, benefit necessarily from economic development intervention, but maybe from a talent side. And then completely echo your point, Trolls. In other parts of the state, especially around agriculture, there's this question about how to increase quality, job quality within the sector. It's harder in tourism. It's still hard in agriculture. So I just entirely agree. These are really big employment categories, and we got to try and be creative about how to generate or improve the quality of jobs within those that are existing versus like an emphasis on greater growth. A lot of places in California and around the country, but especially in California and the Central Valley and so on, or San Joaquin Valley, are grappling with this, and even in the Central Coast, that agricultural job quality and how much it represents in terms of employment.
And there are proven strategies to do that. They do cost money typically, because tradable sector jobs are of course, they're competitive at a national, even global scale, and so they're subject to those constraints often, right? There's, you know, people want cheap and quality and fast and all those kinds of things, and that tends to you know, sometimes people get squeezed on wages when that happens, and that's obviously not great. We don't want to see that, but that's one of the streams we've got to swim upstream against.
Thank you, Charles. You know, I want to note one other comment or piece that you stated in the beginning. Very diversified region, and part of this is also about how to, in the inclusive economy model, how to build out streams for our disadvantaged communities to get into the jobs that are already high quality in the industries that exist, like you mentioned. Elisa, how are you? Good to see you.
Hi, Richard. So thank you for all this. The data was kind of hard to track, but at some point I'll try to delve into a little bit more. But it's one thing to create jobs and to get people trained to be in those jobs, but also I want to make sure that we know that quality jobs is not just funding and good money. Quality jobs means a place where employees do not experience racism, where they have opportunities for job advancement as well. And so we need to make sure that when we're looking at job opportunities, that we're training the businesses and we're providing that infrastructure for them to understand how important it is. Because all the money in the world won't make somebody happy at a job if they're not getting those same opportunities. And we know just by the number of people that we work with that those kinds of that discrimination exists. So I want to just add that there.
Yes. I can't even add more to it. Yes. Excellent. Rana.
Rana.
Thank you, Rana.
Thank you. I just want to add for that, because we've been focusing on healthcare a lot, and I know we talked about it not being a tradable sector, but what about the high quality job that have a barrier to entry because there's no programs that allow people to get the training they need to access those jobs, and trainings that are available are extremely costly. So I think it's also looking at the barriers that exist to high quality jobs that don't allow people to actually gain access to those jobs because the trainings that are necessary are not available at an affordable cost. And I do have some very specific example and some data that I can share that would actually support what I'm saying.
No, completely, and it would be helpful if we haven't caught something, or maybe we might have seen it, or we might not have seen it, to toss that into the mix. We completely agree that that's the access issue, not just the job quality, like the availability issue. So, and again, part of the response that we identified as barriers, not presented here, but we're identified as barriers to to enabling participation.
Thank you. I'm happy. And do we share that with you? Like, what's the best way to share that information?
I think to Valley Vision, and then so it's centralized, and it'll come out to all the team that's supporting this effort.
At the very end of this meeting, we will actually have an email that's going to be shown that you can send information like that too. We'll make sure it gets through. Great comment. Thank you. We've got about, I'm going to say 10 minutes left, probably. So Malachi.
Yes, just wanted to echo what Elisa pointed out in terms of, systemic issues that will impact the health of these workers. We do know that racism is a public health crisis. Many of our counties are on record with resolutions indicating that. And certainly public health and overall health is a is a priority within the Jobs First platform. But what I wanted to really ask, maybe it's one of the Brookings gentlemen, have you done any analysis about the convergence or emergence of AI and how it will intersect with these tradable industries and our job creation objectives? There's a lot of concern, I'm sure, as you know, about how equity and inclusion will or won't play out with the emergence of AI.
Well, that's definitely the question of the day, is how is AI going to affect the economy? There have been studies that show that it's already affecting job growth, or in fact, job decline in the tech sector. We're seeing massive layoffs at some of the big 7 tech companies right now, and a lot of commentators think that that's being driven by advances in AI. Other people have pointed out that it'll, at least initially, primarily affect white-collar workers rather than people that work in the physical face-to-face economy. But all of this is still just conjecture, and we don't really know what the future holds. There's just as much evidence to show that AI will be a net benefit for the economy, but may include a lot of kind of economic adjustment over the coming years. But all of this has happened really over the past year, all of these developments since we've started this project. And no one, not even the experts, have really cracked the nut on how to study the interaction of AI and the economy, or to predict what's going to happen yet. So that isn't something that we are able to kind of project with what we're looking at here. But of course, it's something that we will all want to keep in mind as we start thinking about strategy and how this region moves forward. One thing that I'd like to say is just that, breakthroughs in information technology over the past 30 years have only made places more valuable in time, despite making it easier for people to communicate across space. And there's no reason to think that that won't continue to happen, even as we have extremely powerful technologies like AI. And really, for this region, where you have livability, leisure, and lots of really wonderful different places for people to live and choose from, this is a net benefit, because you've got lots of places that people can work remotely and still thrive.
Also, just toss in that during the sector-based activity exploration in the strategy phase, these are questions to ask about adoption of firms. So other regions we've dealt with have begun to explore, for example, in life sciences, what is the level of AI or machine learning adoption and forecasting, but you have to get that from firms rather than data or projections to understand really what the dynamics and opportunities are within a particular region. So I just add that dimension that I think it's a question to try and answer through strategy. And as Chad said, take into consideration going forward about the local dimensions and how people see that being applied within their activities.
Yeah, and thanks, Merrick and Chad. I just want to point out that, strategy, it's great to hear you say strategy, because, as we're kind of settling in on, what our strategy is, I think, we may want to do some sort of play out of different scenarios just to kind of see what we can do. Obviously, there are many benefits to technology, and we can't predict where the tech sector will go. But it would be great to kind of play out some scenarios, or maybe engage the various clusters, where we think we might be headed, to see how we can make sure that we're making choices about our priorities that truly will result in us being focused on what is truly sustainable.
Awesome. Thank you, Malachi. Oh, Chad, I'm sorry. Were you going to comment?
Nope, I was just agreeing.
Sorry. Thank you, Malachi. And yeah, this strategy component is going to be one of the more important pieces. We figure out how to lift this work. I want to honor everyone's time. We've got just enough time for one more question, comment, text. I'm going to leave it to you to close this out, and then we're going to go into our conclusion piece. Please remember the Padlets are staying up for a while, so you'll have, after this meeting, you'll still have time for the Padlets to stay up, so that for at least 24 hours you can get in there and be able to use them and add comments, so we can take that information back. Tex.
Okay, so one of the issues that abounds in this area is some of the jobs, like in Yolo and Colusa and Sutter, the agricultural jobs are seasonal. They're not full-time, so they're going to be not high quality. And then hospitality tends to be, at least in our region, seasonal, or for restaurant workers, not full-time. So again, not high quality, even though those are tradable jobs. So expanding them. Now, I could see the other thing that you're talking about, the components of processing and warehousing for agriculture and other industry, but those require a lot of investment in infrastructure. So how do we work that all in? That was my question. I just, the tradable industry concept, I think, is a valuable one. I'm not sure how it works in the largely rural areas, but I see the benefit. I just don't know, how do we get there?
Yeah, so let's take the job quality question first. The analysis that we're doing looks at people's year-round earnings, not their hourly wages. So we are assessing a quality job is a quality job based on how much the worker in that job earns on an annual basis. So if we're saying that a job in tourism is a quality job, it's because that is a job that at least supports a livable wage on an annual basis, if not, a seasonal one. So that part is taken care of, and that follows through not just for the tourism economy, but also for the agricultural economy. And one thing I do want to point out is that field labor jobs do not survive our quality job criteria, our screen there. So most of the agriculture and food that we're talking about here has to do with food processing, so like rice milling or soybean milling, not oilseed processing, not jobs picking soybeans or working in a rice field. Those jobs are seasonal in addition to being low paid, and so they fall out of the screen and aren't really eligible for kind of the consideration under the criteria that we have here. Your second
and
point,
the machines, and talk about the machines impact. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Well, the jobs taking care of the machines are at least good ones, but yes, the
Right.
machines are taking more and more of the field jobs. The second point about infrastructure, that's a really, really good one. I do want to just, before we go there, just point out that warehousing does not survive our screens either. Those are not sufficiently good jobs to be considered here. When we're talking about logistics, we're talking about really the jobs that involve moving materials around the region from basically, the field to the warehouse, or the field to the milling facility. Warehousing is not good. But on the infrastructure part, absolutely, we agree that there's a lot of investment that's necessary to make these things possible. And laundry listing what kinds of infrastructure investments we need in order to make a tradable economy possible in rural areas is really, really important. I remember the last time I was in the region and you and I met face to face, we talked about this. In fact, we talked also about broadband, not just roads and physical infrastructure. You guys need, broadband so that people can work from home, and so that, the 21st century office jobs can thrive in Nevada County and other rural areas of the capital region. So absolutely agree with you there.
All right, thank you. We are hitting our time moment. So I just want to pause and say thank you to everybody. These are such big questions and such amazing information and a lot of processing. And we've got time in front of us, but we also will continue to get your feedback and need your support in what information, what thoughts you have, or questions, and what we can help provide to get you to a place where you feel comfortable, at least comfortable enough to get us started, right? I'm going to pass it over to Evan to help close us out. And Gus, if you can bring the slides back up. Thank you. Evan, over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks everybody for your both your attention and your engagement, questions and conversation. I think we're getting off to a really great start as we start to zero in on some of these key concepts and key questions for our region. Let's go to the next slide. I think I have a few things to share before closing out at 4 o'clock. So first of all, I want you to be aware of some upcoming events, including a virtual winter full collaborative meeting. So this is a larger public meeting where we are going to be sharing a lot of the same information. Actually, we want to make sure that our full collaborative and anyone who is interested is able to also be looking at this data, thinking about these issues, having this kind of move into sub-regional conversations. And so we're doing all we can to provide the information and resources and time to be able to do that. So you can see the link in the chat and the QR code here. Encourage you to share this. Love to have your participation, and we're looking forward to doing that on the 23rd. Our next Leadership Council meeting will also be virtual. That'll be a month from today, I believe, on March 21st, Thursday, again from 2 to 4. So we'll see you back then. Looking forward to that. And then finally, our operating procedures ad hoc committee that Richard presented earlier in the agenda. Thank you to those volunteers. We'll be following up and looking forward to diving into those operating procedures and having something to bring back to the full committee in our next meeting. Do I have any other slides? Okay, great. I think Gustavo's information has already been put into the chat, but please contact us with any questions you have. We're going to be thinking as a team about how we can offer resources between meetings to ensure that you are able to take the time that you need to fully get your questions answered, think through this data, and engage with us about any questions you might have or any comments that you might have. So we really invite your engagement and feedback, and we will certainly be coming back to you with our ideas about how to best do that. I want to really appreciate all the unique lenses that everybody brings to this conversation. I fully acknowledge that this deep dive into economic development and data really might not be everybody's jam, and don't expect that everyone's going to have the same lens and knowledge base on that, but we are trying to make it as accessible as possible and help bring us around some common ideas that will help support decision making. And so just to kind of zoom out and kind of come back to what's our purpose here? How are we moving through these decisions as part of the program? You know, the job that's in front of us is choosing some focus areas to help support inclusive economic growth for our region. You know, one way of doing that is through the data, and that's what we've really been focused on today, is looking at the data that can help us choose priority focus areas. And the other is other types of inputs, like local inputs, community engagement, qualitative data. And that's all things that we'll be bringing to you as well. All of this helps move us towards choosing those focus areas. Some of them will be sector-based, some will be non-sector based. But this will all help us kind of filter our understanding of what's really needed in our region and in our communities to support inclusive economic growth. A major area of strategy development will be around reducing barriers. That's a really important part of this. We haven't gotten deeply into those conversations yet, but I've seen that coming up in the Padlets and in the discussions, and I want everyone to know that that's a very real thing that we'll have to grapple with. And then ultimately, we're looking at how are we creating inclusive pathways and how are we creating jobs? And these are both very important as we build an inclusive economy and really create that vision for our region that has the opportunity to impact people across the region for the very long term. So we're really excited about doing this work with you. Really appreciate you walking this path with us, and we'll continue to be engaged every month on this. Appreciate you so much. Hope you have a great evening, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Evan, and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much from Yolo County.